Yo, this is Chris coming to you live from the basement, and this is Facts Over Feelings. Listen, y'all, let me ask you something. Is this the America you want? An America where your vote can be erased with a phone call? Where truth gets fired, not fixed? Where inflation doesn't exist, but your grocery bill says otherwise? We say we hate government control, but we're living in the era of control wrapped in freedom slogans. And the wildest part about it is I have friends on both sides. Smart people, good people, not elites, not sheep. They just want something real, something fair. But somehow we reached the point where defending truth makes you the enemy. Where one man, richer and more powerful than ever, can still convince people he's the victim. So today we're breaking it all down. Gerrymandering, jobs data manipulation, and the bigger question, what happens when power replaces truth? So let's go. And listen, y'all, if this is the type of breakdown that's speaking to you, please support the channel, like the video to help the algorithm find more truth seekers like yourself. Subscribe as you don't want to miss the next one. And drop a comment if your district feels rigged and you stop trusting the data. And support the Facts Over Feelings movement at FactsOverFeeling.com. And yeah, we'll get right into this. So listen, I want to start early with the little clip. I told you I wanted to talk about gerrymandering. And at the end of the day, we could get into a whole nother argument about the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which we'll cover on another episode. But the one thing that I want to get into is the topic of gerrymandering because, I'm originally from Ohio. I live in Illinois now, and I've seen gerrymandering in both states. But if you don't know what it is, I want to give you a little bit of a breakdown of exactly what gerrymandering is. So let's roll this clip.
Congressional map of Pennsylvania's 7th District. So is this, and also this. So why does it keep changing? In this case, it's called gerrymandering, and here's how it impacts our democracy. Gerrymandering is when voting district boundaries are drawn with the intention of influencing who gets elected. So instead of voters choosing their representatives, representatives choose their voters.
Instead of voters choosing their representatives, representatives choose their voters. And that shit is a fact. All right, let's keep rolling.
Every 10 years, the census records population shifts around the country. This determines how many congressional representatives each state gets of the total 435. So if your state grew in population, you get more representatives and vice versa. Then it's up to the states to redistrict or redraw district lines, which is required by the U.S. Constitution. Each state has its own process for redistricting. A few states have independent commissions to create the maps in order to avoid politics getting in the way. But in most cases, here's how it goes down. State legislators will draw up the new maps, and the governor has the power to veto it. But this can get messy when politicians use these map revisions for their party's own political gain. While gerrymandering has been going on for centuries, the term dates back to 1812. Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry used his influence to push through a redistricting map that would keep his political party in power. The new map resembled a salamander, so the Boston Gazette dubbed it a gerrymander. Since 1812, populations and demographics in America have evolved, and laws such as the Voting Rights Act are meant to ensure that these maps represent a state's population. But in 2019, the Supreme Court ruled that gerrymandering for party advantage cannot be challenged in federal court, although in some cases, the state will intervene, like when Pennsylvania's oddly shaped 7th District was drawn by Republican lawmakers in 2011. It stretched across 50 miles of Philadelphia suburbs and Amish farmland, without following any geographic boundaries or community lines. Left-leaning areas were intentionally excluded in order to strengthen the right-wing base. In 2018, Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that the congressional map was an excessive partisan gerrymander that favored Republicans. Critics say there are really no national standards when it comes to gerrymandering, which is why you can expect the issue to be challenged in courts.
So check this out. Let's start with the voting maps. Listen, the voting maps, right? These are supposed to be the foundation of democracy. But in Texas last month, one call from the president and boom, new redistricting maps designed to give Republicans a multi-seat edge. And look, I think, again, the history of gerrymandering is, like, as you just saw in that video, is something that's been around for decades, right? It's something that won't change overnight. And I don't think a lot of people would have had an issue with it after the census, but we're mid-decade. 2030 should be the next redrawing of those maps. And so I think a lot of people look at it and go, well, the only reason you want to draw them now is because we're in a situation where we have an unpopular administration and they could be a risk in 2026. So let's call it what it is, right? But look, I'm not going to act like it's brand new. I just said that, right? Democrats do it too. And if you want proof of that, I want to just show you this clip because it's kind of funny and it's kind of ironic. Just to give you a little backstory. So the Texas Democrats left Texas so they could break the quorum and not actually have to vote on these gerrymander maps. So they come to the state of Illinois. Again, there's irony in this, and you'll see why in just a second. So let me roll this clip.
Well, if you're considering doing a little more redrawing in Illinois, you already have some crazy districts in Illinois. Take a look at this. Look at 17 here. It does that, then it comes up here and it sneaks around there and goes all the way up here and then goes right over there like that. And look at this one, kind of goes whoop up there. It's like the stinger on a scorpion down here. Is this common for all states to do?
Well, we handed it over to a kindergarten class and let them decide.
And look, we'll make jokes about it. But that's the reality. That's what I'm talking about. Both sides know the game. But here's what most folks don't realize. Gerrymander isn't just about giving one party an advantage. It's also about keeping power locked into place, protecting incumbents. That's how you end up with lawmakers like Lindsey Graham or Nancy Pelosi, who've been around for what seems like forever, right? They're not worried about general elections. Their districts are too safe. They're worried about primaries. So when districts are drawn to be uncompetitive, it's not democracy, it's a fortress. That's not representation, it's entrenchment. A 2021 study from Yale found that as many as 59 congressional seats have been shifted through gerrymandering, enough to represent more than the entire state of California. Now, just to put that in perspective, I believe we have 435. 59? Can that swing legislation? Absolutely. And the worst part, there was a bill a few years ago to fix it. It failed. And that's because neither party wants to give up the pen. So instead of voters picking their politicians pick their voters. Everyone should be outraged by this. Not Democrat, not Republican, just people. Everyone should be pissed off and be tired of it. This is the reason why people go out and they don't feel like their vote matters. All right, so speaking of that, speaking of data, let's talk a little data. So last week, Trump fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner. Why? Because the jobs report didn't look good. He didn't challenge the methodology. He didn't propose a better measure. He simply just didn't like the numbers. Now, here's what makes that dangerous. The BLS is not some fringe blog. It's one of the most respected economic data institutions in the world. For decades, the BLS has been the global gold standard used by the IMF, the World Bank, the EU, Fortune 500 companies, you name it. But now it's facing budget cuts, political pressure, and plummeting participation in employer and household surveys. Think about this. In 2010, response rates were around 80%. So surveys, they have to collect the data somehow, right? As of July 2025, they dropped under 58%. So what does that mean? That means more revisions, more volatility, right? Less trust, even though it was pretty much trusted by everyone, with the exception of a small circle of a few. And so when a top data official gets fired for doing her job, that doesn't fix the numbers. It just breaks the thermometer. Look, May and June's numbers were revised down by over 258,000 jobs, not because of bias, but because data collection is getting harder. But still, the BLS remains more transparent and credible than most agencies worldwide. But not if we keep politicizing every number, right? So I want to roll this clip just to give you a quick idea of how the BLS actually works so that people don't think, well, you know, if you're revising down 258,000 jobs, that shouldn't happen. It should be perfect the first time. Again, it's just adding numbers that come from a plethora of sources. So let me just roll this clip to give you a better idea.
What is the Bureau of Labor Statistics? Have you ever wondered how we know so much about the job market, wages, and working conditions in the United States? The answer lies with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS for short. The BLS is a part of the U.S. Department of Labor and is the main agency responsible for gathering and analyzing data related to labor economics and statistics. Imagine it as a vast data collection and analysis machine that helps both the public and private sectors make informed decisions. The BLS collects data on labor market activity, which includes things like job openings, hires, quits, layoffs, and other separations. This information is gathered through surveys like the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, or JOLTS, which provides a monthly snapshot of the labor market. In addition to labor market data, the BLS also tracks working conditions, price changes, and productivity in the U.S. economy. For example, they publish the Consumer Price Index, CPI, which measures the average change in prices of a basket of goods and services. The BLS is made up of over 2,000 federal employees, including economists, statisticians, data scientists, and other professionals.
In other words, these people, they're smart. They're the nerds that, you know, they're bean counters. No offense to the bean counters that are watching, but, you know, they're smart. Smarter than me, smarter than you, right? So why wouldn't we trust that they know how to do what they're doing? It's nonpartisan. We've had revisions for the past few years. It happened under Biden, happens under Trump. It'll happen under the next president. That's the reality, right? Your eyes aren't lying, but someone's trying to convince you that they are, right? That's the reality. But, you know, the thing about it, I want to zoom out. And the reality is this. And we could probably debate this all day. But if you think President Trump is the most powerful, wealthy, followed, and resourced political figure in the country, yet everything is built on one idea, that he's the victim. You can have in the same sentence him calling himself a victim, but also talking about how he can't stop winning. I don't know many people that can do both. He's got billions in wealth, entire news outlets pushing his agenda, the Supreme Court in his pocket. I won't even say in his pocket because that insinuates that they're paid off, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that they like to side with him. And then he has a deeply loyal base. But somehow we're supposed to believe the system is stacked against him. Meanwhile, you and I and a lot of the people I know, we wake up every day with real odds stacked against us. We can't fire our bosses for telling the truth. We don't get to redraw our reality with a map or a microphone. But the president can. And 3 elections later, 2 victories, we still call him the underdog? The underdog story was gone a long time ago. That's the power of propaganda. That's how you convince people the sky is green and truth is betrayal. This isn't just delusion, it's a feature of authoritarian psychology. Convince people their strongest leader is actually their most oppressed. Think about that. And meanwhile, us, the people every day, we're going back and forth, button heads, not getting richer, but we're still button heads. Mad at immigrants, mad at LGBTQ plus. Mad at red versus blue. That's the reality. And so while we argue about bathrooms and border slogans, here's what's actually happening. Wealth inequality is worse than it was during the Roaring Twenties. And we know how that ended in 1929. Wages haven't outpaced inflation in 30 plus years. Housing is unaffordable in over 70% of metro areas. Student loan debt, all-time high. Child poverty is rising for the first time in a decade. And the institutions that used to alert us to the collapse, they're being gutted or corrupted. It's not just chaos. This is precision. This is precision to create confusion. Because when you're overwhelmed and exhausted, it's easier to believe the guy shouting on stage than the facts scrolling on the screen. We're not in the dark. We're being blinded. Speaking of that, headlights, they're bright as shit nowadays, right? That's what we're being blinded by. You know what I'm talking about. You're driving on a dark road, headlights just blinding you. That's what's happening every day. And if we keep pretending like it's not happening, we'll wake up in a country we just don't recognize at all. So I want to give you a little bit more context. I'm not going to play this entire clip, but I'll play a little bit of it because I want to show you some of the similarities to the Roaring Twenties to right now. And it's actually kind of scary. So let's roll this clip.
Roaring Twenties were a time of extraordinary prosperity, but they ended with the catastrophic stock market crash of 1929. As we look at today's economy, many are asking if we're seeing signs of a similar crisis. Let's dive into the similarities and warning signs that could suggest history might be repeating itself. From the Roaring Twenties to now. In the 1920s, the US was in the midst of a roaring economic boom. The aftermath of World War I set the stage for rapid technological advancements and unprecedented industrial growth. Innovations such as the automobile and the radio revolutionized daily life. The stock market was on fire, with people pouring money into stocks and borrowing heavily to invest. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing some eerily familiar patterns. The recovery from the 2008 financial crisis has spurred massive technological progress, from smartphones to artificial intelligence. We've seen substantial growth in the stock market and consumer spending.
Stock market
But this
going
rapid
crazy.
expansion is raising concerns that history might be on repeat. 1920s economic crash. One major red flag in the 1920s was overleveraging. Investors were buying stocks on margin, borrowing money to bet on stock prices rising. This made them extremely vulnerable to market swings. When the market finally crashed in 1929, many were left with massive debts and worthless stocks. Today, we see a similar story. With easy credit available, both individuals and corporations are borrowing extensively. There's been a surge in speculative investments, particularly in high-tech startups and cryptocurrencies. This raises concerns about potential bubbles that could...
So I'll drop the link in the comments so you can see the full video yourself. But there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot. And I think the number one is the wealth disparity. You know, if you look at the top 1%, more money gets pulled toward them and less against the bottom 99, right? And anytime that happens, that starts to become a problem. So I'll ask you again, is this the America you want? Where your vote is a bargaining chip, where truth gets pink slipped, where power pretends to be the underdog? You deserve better. We all do. But we don't get better by defending a system that punishes truth and protects lies. We are bigger than one person. We are bigger than one party. We're bigger than two parties. We're 330 million strong. And it's time we start acting like it. So listen, like this episode if it hit, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment with the biggest lie Americans are still believing Right now, support the movement at FactsOverFeeling.com. We don't sell fear here. We sell clarity, and we build around a truth that fights back. Thanks for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next episode. If you made it this far, you're not just scrolling, you're searching. Hit that subscribe button and share this with one person who actually thinks. And if you're ready to keep pushing past that noise, tap the box on the screen. I'll see you there.